And in addition, Diego Rubio has joined us, and Diego was is an Army veteran, was attached to Special Force Operations, and he is chair of Veterans of Wall Street, and we're just so thankful to have him on here as one of our guests as well.
So today we're talking about walking a mile in someone's shoes. The promise of America is a great one. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it takes hard work, sacrifice, and accountability. Accountability is something we touched on quite a bit last time with Lee and Coach Tony and Coach Lev and Mike Haynes. We've not always lived up to that promise for some, and today we will walk a mile in someone's shoes as we listen to differing stories about what it's like to grow up and live in America. What is a real experience to me is real, even if you have not had that experience. Some of you will not agree with all that you hear today. Some of you what you hear may make you angry, shock you, make you cry. You also hear from those who protect and serve our communities as they share that experience. We're going to do some role play about perceptions and whether protect and serve means just that, or does it mean pray and abuse. Please understand that we are here to listen. God gave us all 2 ears and 1 mouth, and we will use proportionally. We're going to learn. We're going to provide some positive solutions. We're going to find common ground and understanding of our differences. We do not need to agree on everything, but we need to find some respect for each other on a basic human level.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all human beings are created equal, that as human beings we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, what our country here is founded upon. Even if we disagree, we must always remember your unalienable rights do not supersede mine. We are both humans. Thank you.
There are those who have an economic interest in chaos, and that is not the place here. We seek to rise above that. We are here to listen. Please take a deep breath and think about what you are hearing and walk a mile in their shoes. The town hall guidelines, the session will last anywhere from 90 minutes to 2 hours. All audience members, please remain on mute during the session unless called upon by a moderator. If you have a question or have a comment, there's a chat box. You can post those comments. Last week we got to almost everybody's question, so we're going to try to get to as many questions as we can. All speakers are asked to keep their remarks to 1 minute, please. When we do our roundtables, this will allow for the most interaction and for questions to be addressed. At the 1 minute mark, you're going to hear Renata ring the bell.
I'm trying, guys. How about that? Did you hear that?
We're going to have a little bell. That just means to please try to wrap up. You know, we're not going to hit the mute or whatever. We want to hear what people have to say. All questions, please type them into the chat box and we'll get to as many as we can. There's no political statements allowed. This is a positive, respectful dialogue on how to improve our communities by being more kind and civil to those we don't know. We will remove any disruptive participants. And with that, I would like to introduce our featured guests for today. The first one was one of our very first speakers when we started this project, and that will be Judy Lynch, the sister of George Floyd. I'd like to introduce Judy. If you can please introduce yourself. Hit yourself off mute.
Okay, I figured this thing out. Y'all excuse me. How y'all doing today?
Hello, Miss Judy.
Hello. Yes, I'm George Floyd's sister. I'm one of the oldest sisters. I'm doing good. I'm glad to be here and to listen to what you all got going on. so we could figure out what to do. Not only my brother was killed by the police officer, my youngest son was killed by a police officer also. So I've been through this twice in the past 7 years. This is my second time on this rodeo. But at the same time, I'm still trying to make a difference, make a change. So no more young men get killed or young women get killed. But I'm ready whenever y'all are. See what we can do to make these things a lot better in these communities.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Judith. Thank you. Next, so the next guest we have Pastor Darrell Scott. Pastor Scott is a senior pastor at Pastor New Spirit Revival Center. He also is the CEO and has his own radio station, Radio 1000. Pastor Scott.
James, is Pastor Scott on, or do you want to just go ahead and take it? Pastor James Davis.
Is his name on?
Yeah, he's off mute. I see him listed, so we'll just.
You want to keep it moving?
Yeah, we're going to keep moving. Hopefully he'll figure out. We also have with us Lee Rowson, NFL two-time Super Bowl champion, and Mike Haynes, NFL Hall of Famer, voted one of the top 100 NFL players of all time for the 100th anniversary. They're going to be joining our panel in a few minutes. We also have with us General Scott Rice, the Air National Guard Director. I'm not sure if he has joined yet. General Rice, are you here yet?
Yes, I'm on, and I'm at Chief Anderson's house right now. So you have the command chief of the Air National Guard as well as myself on the line, as both of us. So it's good to see you all.
Good to see you guys. Thank you guys for joining us today.
Thank you, gentlemen.
So we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of Walk a Mile. We're going to start off by doing a little role playing. So I'm going to set the scene, and then I'm going to call on some of the guests to participate in the role play. So as we look at our community, we look at that as our flock. And what we want to look at is, how do we have a relationship between the shepherd and the wolf? So I'm going to start off with Captain John Tom of the LAPD. If you would start us off, as the community you serve as your flock, do you view yourself as the shepherd, or do you view yourself as the wolf? You have to unmute yourself, sir. If you hit the red button, Captain Tom. We're having people having trouble unmuting themselves. All right, we'll go to Adam Bailey, because he's practiced in the art of unmuting himself. So Adam, same question to you. Do you consider yourself a shepherd, or do you consider yourself the wolf? And you can introduce yourself as you answer.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know me, I'm a retired St. Paul police officer in Minnesota. I served for 16 years as a law enforcement officer and recently retired last year due to PTSD issues. I think most police officers and myself, it's not as a shepherd, but it's as the sheepdog. And that's kind of the analogy that a lot of people make, is the sheepdog and the wolf, and keeping that wolf away from the sheep. And so I think that we view ourselves more as the protectors and guardians of the flock rather than the wolf or the shepherd that kind of tends to the flock. It's more of a, we're there to protect them more than anything else.
Okay. We also have with us representing our police panel, we have Paul Ottavinia. If you could, Paul, if you need me, I'll repeat the question. The community is your flock. Do you view yourself as the shepherd or as the wolf?
Definitely the shepherd or the sheepdog is what Adam just said. I would agree with pretty much, exactly what he said. To get into a specific thing, when I teach active shooter to my officers, I tell them, when you're about to go into that room where that guy might be, money isn't going to send you in there. The love for your community, right? The kids that are in that classroom, the teacher that's in that classroom, they're not your kids. They're not your wife, right? But you have to go in there and protect them. So it's got to be that shepherd or that sheepdog mindset.
Okay. Jonathan, Tom, if you're able to unmute, would like to hear from you, and if you could please introduce yourself as your answer. Thank you.
Hi, I'm sorry, I'm trying to have some technical difficulties bouncing back and forth between my iPad and my phone here. My iPad's, so my name is Jonathan Tom. I'm a captain with the Los Angeles Police Department. I've been a captain for 5 years now. Currently the commanding officer of West Los Angeles area. And in response to the question, a shepherd or a wolf,
Yes.
we're really neither one of them. Going back with what one of the other officers indicated, we view ourselves as the sheepdog, tasked by the shepherd to do certain missions to protect overall the flock or the herd, however you want to look at it. But essentially, we're given missions, and we accomplish those missions. So we don't give the direction as a shepherd might give directions. But one of the examples that I give to people is that the sheepdog protects the herd, whether or not the herd wants them to, or whether they ask them to, or even if they understand what it is that they're doing. That is our job to do, and we embrace that wholeheartedly.
Thank you.
Is Julia? Thank you, sir. Is Julia on, John?
I'm looking. No, he's not.
You want to then finish these ones?
Yeah. So if Brian, what's the? You had another friend that was a law enforcement.
Yeah, Kenny Kearns. He's a homicide detective in St. Louis. He's been trying to get on. I'm not sure what he's having difficulties on a laptop, and I can't direct him on it. So get on iPad or iPhone.
All right. So we've now heard from our police panel on how they view themselves as looking after their flock. So now we're going to turn to some of the folks from our community, and we're going to get the question to them. So the first person will be to Judy Lynch. So Judy, if you can unmute yourself, as you are the flock, you are the community, how do you view the police? Do you view the police as a shepherd, or do you view the police as a wolf?
What happened?
I think we lost Judy. Hopefully she'll come back. So we'll go to our next panelist, Trinity Marisette. Can you unmute yourself? And if you could please introduce yourself. And if you are the community and you are the flock, how do you view the police? Do you view the police as a shepherd, or do you view the police as a wolf?
Hello, I'm Trinity Marcette. I live in North Carolina, and I just recently moved to California.
Oh.
And I would say I would view the police maybe as a wolf in sheep's clothing, maybe. I think they do have a goal to protect people, but I just believe that they should be a bit more sensitive and protect everyone and not just people that look like them. And it's hard when you haven't grown up with other people and you know their differences. But I think it's very important when you're in a position in power to remove your biases and really think about your actions, because you can affect people's lives every single day. So
Thank you. And we're going to come back to you in a minute on a different panel. So Pastor James Davis, growing up in Cleveland, um, you're the flock, you're part of the community. How do you view the police? Do you view the police as your shepherd or as a wolf? We're still having issues with James getting on. Um, so Overton Nash, if you could please unmute yourself. Overton, you are growing up in Oakland. If you could please introduce yourself to the group and address the question as the flock. Do you view the police as your shepherd or as a wolf?
Thanks, John. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes. Well, my name is Overton Nash. I was born and raised in East Oakland, and you know, I wasn't quite I don't know, the most impeccable citizen, I guess, growing up. But it was more so catered to the environment that I grew up in. And as it pertains to the question that John asked me, I went into the Marines, and I did 4 years. I got out on a honorably discharged, and even now today, I view the police as a wolf, or a wolf in sheep's clothing. And the reason why I feel that way is because all of my interactions in life, there's been maybe a handful of times that I've met like some really good officers that were like really there to help or really help me. I cannot say that it's never happened, but most times officers are looking for a reason or excuse to harass or to arrest or detain you for some reason, or seem to like kind of demean you in some type of way, or deny you your rights. And most of the altercations that I've come into contact with police have been like that. And so it's become a subconscious thing for me just to avoid the police. Not that I'm doing anything wrong. It's just that it's just better. I feel like I'm better off without the police around because it'll hurt more than it would help.
Okay. Thank you, Overton. Jeremy Hunt, if you could please unmute yourself and introduce yourself to the group, and you as the flock. Do you view the police as your shepherd or as a wolf? I know Jeremy's here because we had him before. Jeremy Hunt, if you hit the red button, that unmutes you.
Goodness.
We're having some. Judy's trying to log back in. James is having problems. All right, we're gonna. So Kenneth Vinson, if you could unmute yourself, if you could answer that question, do you view, and also introduce yourself to the group, do you view the police as your shepherd or as your wolf, or as a wolf?
Hello, my name is Kenneth Vinson from Los Angeles, California. That's actually a mixed question. I see situations where both roles play out. Ideally, I'd like to see them be the sheep. But I think experiences tell us that that's not always the case. So my answer would be that I'd like to see them as a sheepdog, but I think history tells us that we have a mixture of both.
Okay. Jeremy Hunt, if you could, if you figured it out and can unmute, as soon as you can unmute, I'd like to have you answer that question. And then Dick Brock, as the flock, first introduce yourself, and then as the flock, do you view the police as your shepherd or as a wolf?
Well, I'm sorry to say they're more of a wolf than a shepherd. And that's discouraging to me because when I was growing up, I was born in the 40s, growing up in the 50s is when I got to know cops. And they were all beat cops then. They're all your buddies and you knew them all and smile at you and you play tricks on each other. And it was, the cops were just fine and they helped us and they were our protectors. And I saw them that way. It's an old name, but the Bebops started out, and this is in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The Bebops were a problem. They grew around the gangs and they had on them, we call them tanker jackets, which were green army looking things. And they just caused trouble, just were gangs. And the cops protected us from them, the kids from them, as well as my family. My mom and my dad didn't have to worry at night. And the cops took care of us. But something happened in the 60s and the policing in my mind, my feeling hasn't been the same since. You get spoken to in directives. No one's your friend. I've been self-employed since since I was 24 years old, 1969, I guess that would be. I had my own corporations. I still do. If I go down and apply for a permit that requires the police to do it, for instance, we had a jewelry shop and we started to get a pawn license when the economy went way down because we thought a lot of our customers needed some cash. So we had some cash and we could loan it out. And so I went through all the hoops of doing the pawn thing. If you went down to the cop shop and tried to just fill out a form, I was the lowest scum on earth. It was just awful. And this is Garden Grove, California now. I'm next to Disneyland. This should be it's a little bedroom community, but they're just awful people to deal with. Not friendly at all. So I'm sorry I have to say that. I've had a few run-ins with them in traffic and whatnot. And again, not pleasant to deal with. It's just awful. Having said that, you've got a chief in Los Angeles now. You may know a couple of my son's friends. They're Korean, who are wonderful officers, I'm sure. And they're great people. I've known them since they were in grade school with my kids. And I'm sure they're great cops. I don't know what they do on the job, but still in the person, they're just the great kids that they used to be, smiling and wonderful family people, whatever. So that's my experience as a businessman. I'll keep it short because I only go 1 minute, but I'm sorry to say more wolf than sheep.
Thanks, Dick. James, have we been able to figure out the unmute deal? James Davis, if you hit your screen and hit the red button, it should unmute you.
And John, we just had Coach Bashir Abdullah join us. Coach Bashir Abdullah is a retired NCO from the Army and four-time U.S. Olympic team boxing coach, Team USA coach, four-time Olympics. Thank you for joining us, Coach.
James, if you can go ahead, I think we might be able to hear you now. Nope, we're still having technical difficulties. Just sounds like you're the Japanese monster movie. We can see your lips moving, but that's about all we got. I sent you a call-in, a phone call-in number. Sometimes you have to do that in order to get in, that we can hear you. Not quite sure what the issue is, but we'll come back to you. So as we could see from that role playing, there's a disconnect between how the police view the community and how the community deals the police. So therein lies sort of the crux of what we're dealing with as a country. And so what we want to try to do for the rest of the time here today is try to look at what's the cause of that and what can be done in the future to try to improve that relationship so that the community and the police are on the same page as how they view what they do. So I appreciate everybody's honest feedback. And so we're going to get into some panels now. So first, we're going to start with our young adults. And so I would like to, Trinity, if you could unmute yourself, if you could talk to us about what it's like. Tell us a little bit of story about, growing up in North Carolina, going to an all-black high school, and then moving out to California and going to an all-white high school. And based on that personal experience, experiences that you've had and interactions you've had with the police, and what would it take for you for the police to earn your trust?
Okay, so I went to school in North Carolina. It was actually an all-white high school, and then I came to California again to an all-white high school. And I'm black myself, and my parents are pretty well off. And some experiences that I would have in school, in the classroom, I've had at least 2 to 5 people ask me if my dad was a drug dealer just because my family was well off. And of course that's not true, but it was just very difficult, just because the students would assume because my parents have money that they would have to be doing something illegal for me to have security in life. And I think in North Carolina, the people are more active, I guess, with their assumption of other people. And then in California, it's a bit more passive. And I've definitely had more negative encounters with police in North Carolina. For instance, my dad and I, we like to work out and stay healthy. And we would visit this white lady's house because she had a gym in her house, and we would train there. And she told my dad to go on a run around the neighborhood just for a warm-up. And one of the residents in the area apparently thought that my dad should not be in that area, and they called the police on him. And they came and stopped my dad, asked him for an ID, and he had to sit on the curb like a dog for over 30 minutes while they were questioning him and asking him what he was doing in that neighborhood, when all he was doing was running around the block just to warm up so we could get started on our workout. Just things like that makes me fear the police. And I know not all policemen are bad, but when you have a system that is run on justice and just one person does the wrong thing, it can have consequences for everyone in the community, and the bad police officers look, it can make the good police officers look bad, and it just draws a very gray line to where I believe that it's better to just stay away from the police and just keep your head down and know that they're not there to protect me, when some are and some are not, but it's just not worth taking a chance. So that's pretty much my experience.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. So when you talk about that, what would you like to do, or what do you think you could do to improve your community today, or improve the relationship with the police?
I definitely think it's not an issue where it's just a one problem fix all. I think it would have to take work from both sides, and I think we would have to find a common ground, and we would actively have to work to try and better the relations between everyone, so the police aren't afraid of the citizens and the citizens aren't afraid of the police.
So, Shayna, talk a little bit about, first introduce yourself, and then if you could please talk about your personal experience growing up, what your interaction has been with the police, and what would it take for the police to earn your trust?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Can
Yep.
everybody hear me? Okay. So first of all, thank you for to the veterans for your service and your incredible work, protecting us in this country. I'm so honored to be on this call and a part of the movement that is going to impact and change a nation and the world. My name is Uchenna Rusan. I am the eldest daughter of Lee Rusan, Super Bowl champion, and two-time Super Bowl champion. And I proudly grew up in an upper middle class, predominantly white community. My class of over 200 high school graduating students. There were about 6, I believe. I think there were 6. I could probably name them all. African American students in my graduating class. So growing up, there was quite a disparity in the minority population and the white population here. And my dad being a local celebrity, we always kind of had an awareness that we were Black still. So there was just still a thing that even though my dad was a local celebrity, I still always felt like there was a disparity between myself and my fellow classmates. When we were younger, the disparity was a little bit different because there was a program called DARE, the Drug Abuse Resistance Education program, and there were police officers that would come in to the classroom and give us a break, once or twice a week, and teach us about saying no to drugs. And so we, as a community, at a young age, had an awareness of certain police officers, and they would come to our field days, they would hang out with us, they would, like I said, give us a break from our boring history teacher or math, say once a week, and we'd be so excited to see them in uniform, outside of uniform. They just were a presence in our community at a young age, from like 3rd to 5th grade. And on a particular instance, I was in the house, and we have a long driveway, and I saw my mother's car coming into the driveway, and I also saw about 3 police cars with sirens following her car. She got out of the car, started walking towards the house, and I walked outside, and there was a police officer outside, and I immediately ran to him, and I'm like, Officer Rick, Officer Rick, and I jumped into his arms. Police officer who was, obviously pulling over my mother for something unbeknownst to me, and jumped into his arms, and there was, my mother had gotten pulled over down the street. She didn't have her license on her, and they said they were going to follow her home. And the one officer said he was going to follow her home, and there were multiple officers that came into our driveway. And the interaction there, as a child, I didn't know what happened. I didn't really care. I wasn't afraid of the police. I just knew that I had a familiarity with that one face. And it completely changed the narrative of that situation. I'm sure it was just, she didn't have her wallet on her. She went to the grocery store. There was something very simple that could have been solved. And I'm not going to assume that there was some type of profiling involved, but knowing the climate at that time, that there were not a lot of Black people in this area, and that my parents had already warned us, you have certain strikes against you. As a female, as a Black female, you're black, you're a woman. You don't make another strike by being ignorant, by being apathetic, by not understanding the climate of the nation. Was something that I knew, but I also had, from that program and from that familiarity, I had the comfort to be warm towards someone and possibly warm up a situation that was probably not at all a confrontational or, you know, a need for any type of real police action. And, you know, so that was my experience at a young age. You know, growing up, I've been in different areas where it wasn't that way, but I do understand the need for a change, a need for something, some type of program, some type of action like that, which allows officers to be in the community and have a familiarity with their community and not judge just based on, you know, some type of discrepancy that may or may not be of value to, you know, their actual work in the community. So
Thank you. So Jeremy, if you can hear me now, oh, there we are.
Yes.
So question for you. First of all, introduce yourself to the group. And then my question is, can you defend the police and still seek police accountability?
Well, first off, I want to apologize. Earlier, I had to step away. I'm a young father of an 8-month-old, so I have to make sure she's doing well. But yeah, I'm Jeremy Hunt. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia originally, and I went to West Point, graduated in 2015, and I'm in my 5th year of service in the Army. And I'm actually headed to law school next fall at Yale Law School. I'll begin my studies there. And so I'm really excited to be a part of this this great group of folks that are obviously some police folks here and others that have served the community. It's an honor to be with you all. So to answer your question, John, absolutely. I mean, I believe as civil servants and as people that want to help our communities, it's key that we help our police, that we work alongside our police force, and we build that level of trust. And so there's absolutely, we can hold each other accountable at the same time while working together as a team. If you look at even how we work in the military, you know, you're on a team, we hold each other accountable. We have rules, we have regulations, we have officers that oversee soldiers, but at the same time, we are still one team. And so that same type of camaraderie is possible in American cities if we can work together at the local level. You know, getting kind of wrapped up in a lot of big national issues can often distract us from the real work that is often done at the neighborhood, city, municipal level. And so I think that it's key to look at, you know, hey, one size fits all kind of solutions don't always work for every community. We have to look at each individual and say, hey, how can we work alongside those who serve our community, the wonderful men and women that put themselves in harm's way to defend our communities and enforce our laws? How do we work with them while also holding accountable when we have those kind of bad apples that sometimes that you see these challenging stories?
Excellent. Thank you so much, and congratulations on the 8-month-old. I know how much work
Thank
that
you.
can be. So now we want to get into our community members, and hopefully, James Davis, have we figured out how to unmute and hear you? We've been waiting to hear from you all day. No, he's still part of the Japanese monster movie.
Can you hear me now? I'm on the phone line.
We can.
You hear me? I got a bad echo. I got a nasty echo. 1 second. Get rid of the loop. Okay, so I'm talking to you by phone. I don't know if I can hear you, but you can probably hear me. But thanks for the invitation. I guess the third or fourth time is a charm, as they say. And so I concur with a lot that's been said here with regard to, and I know we've moved into the community section of this, and I believe that is what's going to be absolutely necessary in changing some of this, because I had similar upbringing to some of your guests that have come up, and that my family was a bit upwardly mobile, and when we progressed to move into
as we say, the lily white suburbs. We ran into some situations where, you come away with the posture that the officers are wolves. And then the older you get, you realize that they are indeed shepherds. But there has to come, and I'm not sure exactly how it gets done, where we can destigmatize, because there is a stigma amongst people of color that somehow or another, and I'm sure if you ask people the same age across the board, they're going to have similar answers. With one group of people, it is wolf, and with others, it is shepherd. I still, 50-year-old man and a pastor with no criminal issues, still get a bit uneasy in certain areas when police are around, and it shouldn't be that. And I believe that it's going to, we as community leaders, we're going to have to engage our young people. We have to have something more than just the talk, so to speak, with our sons and daughters on how to conduct themselves when they interact with police, but there has to be something deeper with regard to their education and getting involved with the police officers, so that the stigma drops.
Excellent. Thank you for, we finally got to hear from you. And hopefully Pastor Darrell Scott will be joining us first. Diego Rubio, if you could, the question for you. We'll hit that. Diego, if you're there, the question for you, I would like to ask Diego, if you can hear me, is how would a confidence, knowing that there is an effective accountability process throughout our country, allow for Black people to reconcile their experiences and how they had systematic discrimination, but then also have confidence and respect for those that the police officers that serve their community? Diego, if you could.
Hey, Zach.
Yes.
Yeah, can you hear me? Oh, awesome. At least I didn't screw that one up.
And please introduce yourself to the group.
So, absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate everybody having me here. My name is Diego Rubio. I am actually a veteran. I'm actually med board through our veterans program and networks, and I was in the military. I was in the Army for over 10 years. I have a couple of deployments with DSF teams, and it was just a great experience. But I've been very, as a minority myself, not only from a veteran's perspective, but also from other underrepresented minorities, including Latinos. I feel very close to the subject. And to answer your question specifically, and I will only speak this from like what I see, and I'm speaking from myself only, but I'm speaking from what I see in New York, because I live in New York. And one of the things that I find that we did great, and I'm sharing this as a veteran community, that we did great as a veteran community, is keep ourselves accountable for each other, right? Make sure that everybody in the veteran community understood the challenges. Everybody that was not a veteran understood what a veteran was. And it kind of allowed to, I guess, bring the stigmatism down. Because stigmatism is a word that I don't use lightly, but it's a stigmatism that happened. I mean, I've had questions. Again, I'm laying into the answer a little bit quickly here, but I've had questions from a veteran perspective that they've asked me, can a woman be a veteran? All veterans have PTSD. And there is a common misconception that happens. And I think that once we started keeping ourselves accountable, not only ourselves internal, but also externally, and I'm talking about friends of mine, friends of colleagues of mine that are in corporations, leading veterans networks, we keep ourselves accountable. And, accountability, to your point, is one of the biggest things that needs to happen for people to feel comfortable. People need to be able to express themselves however they want, and feel comfortable that there's a big group of them backing them up, regardless of background, culture, race, color of the skin, sexual orientation, religion. It has to be a common arrow pointing the right direction, right? One thing I will say, and I think one of the key things that we need to understand, for me, it all starts with, anywhere from the schools to police departments to corporations to actual communities all over the place. And I think I heard it best in one of the podcasts that I've been hearing, that it says there's a difference between diversity and inclusiveness. Diversity is when you get invited to the dance. Inclusiveness is when you get invited to dance. And I think it's when you get invited to dance, the inclusion of everything, just understanding people's point of views, is going to be key for everybody, especially for those underrepresented minorities, including the Black community, to be able to freely express themselves. And with us veterans at their side, that they freely can express, because like I said, I believe that, and I'll be honest here, I'm going to answer another question that wasn't asked, but I just want to throw it out there that I see, being a veteran, I see the cops when I was a kid as a sheepdog. For the recent events in the last couple of years, I've seen them more being a wolf. And this is coming from a veteran. However, I've had very positive experience with police forces and police themselves. And I believe that sometimes when I got pulled over once, yes, I probably needed new underwear after that, because I definitely almost got a ticket on that one. But I'm telling you, like I just want people to express freely. And Boyd can tell you, I talk to him almost every night and talk to him about how freely we need to express ourselves and everything. But again, accountability comes down to everybody, and that includes not only individuals, that includes organizations, includes businesses, includes coalitions, and includes companies as well. And I don't know if that answered your question, or you want me to
No, that's
elaborate
great.
anything else.
Thank you very much. Kenneth Vinson, given your personal experience with the police, what would it take for them to earn your trust?
Okay, Ken, hopefully you all can hear me. My very short answer to that is I think that we need more training in terms of implicit biases that exist. And I'm going to try and stay on time here. I believe that there are some issues that affect how policing is carried out that we may or may not get to in this call, such as quotas. I actually have a list here, but that kind of gives you an idea. Quotas, I think there's an issue with qualified immunity. I think there's an issue with the militarization that's going on in policing. I think that there is an issue with regards to what we ask police to do, that maybe we could look elsewhere to other professionals to do some of those lower level items. So, and again, I'm sorry, John, if I'm missing your question here, but I just think that there's work to be done that we need to address. As Jeremy said earlier, on the local, at the local level, I think we ask police to do too much that they're not trained for. So hopefully that kind of gives you an answer to your question.
And it leads me into, we're now going to begin our cop police officer panel. And it's interesting, the points that you pointed out, because you'll see as I read off the questions. Captain Tom, if you could unmute yourself. LAPD has one of the strictest accountability standards in the country of any police department. How can we improve that by holding police officers holding each other accountable?
Well, the number one goal of the department is to increase public trust. And listening to some of these comments, it's actually really disheartening on a personal level. I'm someone who grew up in the city of Los Angeles. Family has lived in the city for over 100 years and really invested in the community and in the idea that the police department needs to serve everyone equally. My own family, my own personal experience, my family's experience, we've experienced racism and discrimination, of course, as people of color, like almost everyone has. And so it was really incumbent on me to join this department to make a difference and to kind of like be painted with the same brush as everyone is kind of difficult, I think, on a personal level. But in terms of holding people accountable, LAPD does have very stringent standards. We have a law enforcement code of ethics. We have core values. And specifically, like in 2019, as an example, we had 37 officers that were separated from this department either they retired or quit in lieu of being terminated, or they were terminated by the department. That's actually larger than a lot of police agencies. So in 1 year, we separated 37 people. And that's not to mention the hundreds of people, officers that we institute discipline on, as a result of investigations. LAPD has a policy specifically where we accept all complaints. So if you're a community member and you want to make a complaint, no matter what that complaint is, we are required to accept that complaint by a supervisor and to conduct an investigation. And it goes through several layers of review. But we believe that the discipline that we instill in our department, the standards that we have, that all goes to the transparency for the community, so that you can see that we have standards and that we hold our own people to those
No,
standards.
that's excellent. And just so you know, the goal here is not to gang up on the police or all police are bad. The idea is to try to expose where the strengths and weaknesses are in the community, so that as veterans and as an organization, we can improve the community. And so that was the kind of the basis of the role play that I put together. And I really appreciate you being on this call, because I know you're one of the leaders, especially within LAPD, in trying to improve policing standards. And so my next question is something that Kenneth touched on. Is it a bad thing to demilitarize the police?
If that question's for me, I think it depends on what does that mean. When people say the police are too militarized, I think that it comes with a whole gamut. Are they talking about tanks, helicopters, rifles? As an example, with the LAPD, we were not allowed to carry, the standard patrol officer is not allowed to carry rifles until the North Hollywood shootout. So we had 2 bank robbers that were armed head to toe in ballistic armor, and they had machine guns with 7,500 round magazine drums. They were able to hold off dozens of police officers and shoot, I think it was 15 police officers or so, and only by miracle were more not killed after they had robbed a bank of America in North Hollywood. It was after that, so that was a significant incident in modern policing that made, I think, all policing realize that the potential for us to come up against suspects that are armed in that way, in a way that we weren't used to, is real. It took the SWAT team 44 minutes for them to get out onto the scene. And, as being in the military, and anyone else can just appreciate, 44 minutes is a lifetime. And so to wait for SWAT teams to roll out, as far as our own department, we determined that was unacceptable for our own officers and for the community's sake. So if you're talking about rifles, I would say absolutely, we do have to have that capability. It really depends on what you're talking about. Like, as an example, LAPD does not have any of those military surplus vehicles, the MRAPs that some of the agencies have. We just turn those down. We have
I just think that's an issue that I hear a lot about from community, about the militarization of the police. So I just wanted to have that be a topic, because I think as we try to build the communication between the police officers and the community, perception, matters.
It does, and I think that's why I always ask the question: what does that mean to you when you're talking about militarization? For any of the people in this group, what is it that they find offensive, in particular? And so I think I'd need to know that answer before I can answer specifically.
And to that point, for all our community people on the call, please feel free to put your comments in the chat. So another issue that Kenneth talked about, and we've talked about, you and I, in our conversations, is training. What type of training would you like to see be mandatory for all police officers? Yeah.
And is this again for me, John? Yeah. So LAPD, I can only speak from my perspective in our department. We really have prided ourselves as being a progressive police department, as mandating a lot of the training that I heard someone mention, implicit bias training. We had a professor that came and he trained the entire department on what that concept means. We're training constantly on procedural concepts of procedural justice bias policing. I think that all those things are important and necessary. And I heard someone who was talking about a podcast. I was listening to Jocko Willenick, who obviously is a well-known personality, prior Navy SEAL, and he was talking about how in the Navy SEALs and the Green Berets or Special Forces that they train approximately 20% of their time, and with the police department, it's really just difficult to do that. Every hour that is spent in training is one less hour on the street, and so there's always a balance. But we do really embrace the concepts that through training. We have one of our core values is quality through continuous improvement. So we are constantly looking at how we can improve efficiency and provide better level service to our community. But I do think that those kinds of things, tactical training, we also mandate mental health intervention training, which helps us deal with radio calls or encounters with persons that are having mental health issues or experiencing a mental health crisis. Those are all important things. And I did hear a comment earlier that the police are often tasked with doing jobs that they're not expert in, and that's 100% true. We could always use more training.
Thank you. Adam, if you don't mind joining. What are you passionate about as a police officer?
I mean, when I was a police officer, I was passionate about just helping people and solving their problems. And we don't get a lot of time as police officers to interact all the time. We're there as a Band-Aid, right? People call us for quick fixes or an emergency situation. And a lot of times the police are there just to help put the Band-Aid on. What can we do right now and fix it? And that's hard because we leave the long-term solutions alone, right? We go there, we fix the problem. How can we solve it right now? And that's the police's responsibility, is how can we end this problem or solve this problem immediately? But there is that long-term solution, right? There has to be that more community engagement on both sides, I feel.
And what does respect, like when we talked about our scenario of the wolf and the shepherd versus the flock, you can see that there's a disconnect between how the community perceives the police and how the police perceive their ability to take care of the flock. So how do we bridge that gap, and what does respect look like?
It's tough. I think it starts with parents and teaching kids and community members like what it is on both sides, right? Sorry, my dog's barking a little bit. But I run into 5-year-olds working as a police officer that give me the finger, and they talk about the parents teach them that we hate the cops. And on the same side, there are cops that just go in and are angry, but I don't think that's the many. I think that's the few on both sides, really. But there needs to be education on both sides, with police and with the community.
Okay. Paul, how do police hold each other accountable? In the instance of what happened to George Floyd, there was a police officer who had his knee down on the neck. There's 3 other police officers standing around and no one intervenes. I think that's one of the things that makes people, especially me, my head explode. So how can we create standards so that we can hold police officers accountable for their actions, including not intervening when they see a police officer doing something detrimental? What does that look like to you?
Well, first thing I didn't introduce myself first. My name is Paul Ottaviani. I'm a sergeant in Mount Olive Township Police Department in New Jersey. It's actually the same town that Lee Roussan lives in and Uchenna grew up in. I was actually a professional athlete for 11 years. I played minor league baseball before I became a cop. So I have a very unique, I think, viewpoint. And I still identify, I think, more as a professional athlete than a cop. So I think I see a lot of things that a lot of cops can't see or don't want to see. As far as that specific situation, you know, it's you know, young cops are taught when they first start, hey, keep your mouth shut, keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, learn from your field training officer, listen to the veteran guys. They know what they're doing. You know, they're going to keep you alive. And then there's a culture that perpetuates. You know, I can't, you know, speak for what was going through Derek Chauvin's mind. I can't speak for, you know, exactly what was going through those officers' minds, but I'd have to imagine that, you know, the culture, you know, which I think, you know, is present in a lot of PDs, probably had a lot to do with it. As far as holding each other accountable, you know, that's an issue too. You know, when I played professional baseball, if you had a bad game, you know, it wouldn't be uncommon for another player to come up to you and be like, hey man, like you were off your game tonight and it cost us, like pick it up. And that's something I never see other cops do. You know, if a cop skips defensive tactics training, let's say, which, you know, we get like once a year for 4 hours, which is like, you know, dirty little secret. What would be much more effective is another officer went up to him and said, hey, like, why weren't you there yesterday? The training was good. You know, if we get into something, you know, I'm not going to trust you to, you know, help me. You know, we don't do that with each other. We don't elevate each other. It's always the opposite. And so much of that is then also dictated by budgets. You know, that's a very frustrating thing for me because I'm a firearms instructor, I'm a defensive tactics instructor. I'm always trying to get more, and we're never getting more because it's always, we don't have the time, we don't have the budget to cover the road, we can't buy enough ammo to do that, you know, extra day of training this year, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it permeates into just an individual saying, hey, I constantly want to get better at my job, whether it be defensive tactics, firearms, culture, diversity, you know, any of these things, understanding, you know, implicit bias, all those things. There is just this, hey, once you get on the job, once you got the bat on your chest, hey, okay, like you're good, like you got this. And you know, it's and that's the professional athlete speaking out. You know, I think me and Lee have talked about this. You know, hundreds of swings every day, you know, for 10 months out of the year. There is no equal in police work unless you're on a SWAT team or something like that and you're really training on a regular basis, firearms, defense tactics. The average cop just, you know, it's just here's a little bit of training, all right, here you go out there and good luck. You know, it's like jack of all trades. The problem with that is you're the master of none. So you know, the accountability part is it's a big deal, and it's more of a cultural thing in my opinion.
General Rice, if you could, we're going to bring you into the conversation here. As the National Guard is always at the forefront, whether it's intervening in natural disasters or when rioting or looting or even like COVID duty, the National Guard is front on the line. And also, little known secret is that the National Guard trains a lot of police departments in certain areas. What training would you like to see be mandatory for all police officers? And also first, introduce yourself to the group.
So I'm Scott Rice, and I'm sitting here with Chief Ron Anderson, and we represent the leadership of the Air National Guard. So the Air National Guard has 100,000, 110,000 airmen across the country. We're in every state, you know, several territories, the district. So, you know, pretty large organization that we have. And you know, we spend a lot of time doing training and train organizing. And frankly, the chief and I, we're at the sunset of our time doing this business. In fact, tomorrow is my last day in duty after 40 years and 2 months of doing this business. So I've been around a while doing this crazy stuff. So we all can remember there's a time and place when the military was not so welcome in our community. You know, I'll bring one example of Kent State. You think about Kent State, and young, inexperienced, have no idea how to integrate with a volatile group of people that are not if I want to use an overused word, complying with rules, regulations that either society or the laws have laid in on them to peacefully protest against something that they didn't think was happening right, and specifically the Vietnam War. And the interaction and the clash of that was disastrous. People were killed, and the name of those in uniform was terrible. It was, the whole thing was not good. And how did that culture change? How did that culture of the military change to be one of safety, security, friendliness, and interaction? And I think it was a lot of time on doing the three pieces: education, training, and experience, and doing a balance with all of those. And it's a real challenge that we have, because our front lines are our police force. They're the ones that we expect to keep the safety, security, so that we can live and prosper. And yet at the same time, we, hold them deeply accountable when they misstep. And so that's the world that I live in the military. And so to get to your question in a roundabout way, the training that we need is hard to quantify, because it's not just one thing. I think Trinity said that. It's not one thing that will, I can press a button and say, aha, give them this training. It's the whole thing. And so one part is capacity. You look at New York Police Department. They had a capacity of 10,000 police officers, and they grew that capacity to 40, 50,000 police officers, and they asked the community to support that. And that capacity helped give them the time to do the training on how to do community policing, how to interact with the public, how to be defensive and protect themselves, how to know how to use their tools at their trade and be who they are. And that's been relatively successful. It's a real hard thing to have the police build a culture that is part of as what Shauna said. Hey, when I grew up as a kid, the police were my friends. They were people I loved and respected and could run up to and hug. That's the culture that we need to get back, because we can't live without the police. The police can't live without us, and our community needs the safety and security to grow, prosper, and multiply.
Thanks.
So that's
and,
very important.
On a side note, we're pleased that now that General Rice is retiring, he's going to join Life Aid on the advisory board and be involved with us as much as I can get him to spend his time with us. Hopefully I don't drive him too crazy.
It's all good.
Nash.
All good.
How do you see this type of interaction, this community activity that we're doing here today? How do you see that as veterans? How do you see veterans being able to take this and replicate it in their communities, whether it's schools, churches, or community groups? And do you think it's a valuable exercise?
John, let me see if I understand your question. Are you are you asking me how do I feel about implementing like the topics, a discussion that we're talking about here today in a neighborhood?
Right. So
as like
a
a veteran outreach
do you
program?
see what we're doing here today as a valuable activity to be replicated in the communities across the country?
I do, and the reason I say that is because I think that there's more. It's better structure and better administration and leadership in the military than it is with the local police force. And I would like to say also that there's a distinction in the way that I view the California Highway Patrol versus the local city police, because all the interactions that I have with the Highway Patrol have been mostly pleasant. There may only been like maybe one time that it was just unpleasant. But I don't view them the same way as I see the local police. So the way that I see there was I don't remember her name, but she was talking about when she grew up, there was a DARE program. Well, I grew up in that era too. And I think that like involving the community with the police and doing sports and other events with the community as one team, like splitting everybody up and making them have different partners that maybe they're not used to. I think that that would go a long way along the things that we're talking about, because it would give everybody a different perspective and everyone will receive a different understanding on how to better deal with people that they don't normally interact with.
Yeah. So General Rice, you wanted to have a
Did I answer
finishing
your
comment?
question?
Yeah, I wanted to add something. Something I grew up with in my culture is the fighter pilot debrief. So we regularly go train, and sometimes as a fighter pilot, our training, particularly our airborne training, is pretty intense. And sometimes they end up good, and sometimes they end up bad, and in some cases, disastrous. And in the world of combat, we're building up to you don't have a second chance sometimes. You don't have a second chance to pull back and reflect and do something different. You have to do it right the first time. So we are brutal with our fighter pilot debrief. And it's a term that has been catching on in the military and the Air Force, that when we do our fighter pilot debriefs, and it doesn't matter if it's a fighter pilot or not, it's a debrief where we go into a room, we close the door, all rank, all position, any bias, anything we have comes off, and we just lay it on the table, and the flight lead and the person in charge says, you did this right and you did this wrong. Let's talk about those. Let's talk about the right things you did and the wrong things we did. And so having a good, solid debrief sometimes after pretty stressful events are something that has built a culture in us where we have tremendous respect for each other, yet we have tremendous amount of camaraderie with each other. And, we fight for each other. And that turns us into, more than just a sheep herder where we're responsible for stuff. It turns us into a guard dog, more than just a sheepdog, a guard dog, and pun intended. We're here in the guard to protect the safety and freedoms and rights of others, but also with each other. I would do anything for my camaraderie and my friends and my people, and that's regardless of sex, color, creed, background, whatever it is. I mean, I live and die and am successful based upon those people around me, not about what I do, what we do as a group. And that's what the fighter pilot debrief has
That's
brought
awesome.
us together.
I want to jump to Mike Haynes because he has to go. So Mike, thank you for your patience. These things have that organic sense, but if you can introduce yourself to the group and then talk about how attributes that you had playing in the NFL and the accountability, the teamwork, the dedication, and how you should see some of those be translated to the way that the police serve our community.
That's interesting. Hi, guys. Mike Haynes, 14 years in the NFL, Hall of Famer, great NFL career. And I think like a lot of you guys in the military, some of the lessons I've learned, you've learned, and I'm still learning from you, and I bet you guys are still learning from us. What I really wanted to say, though, John, is not the question you asked me to answer, but I wanted to say something last week.
Yep.
I think it was Boyd. Is he on your team, Boyd? We talked about scenarios, and one of the things that I learned really after I got out of pro football and I was working in the NFL to try and help guys make better decisions off the field. Just like police officers, I'm sure most of the guys are pretty good. Just like in the NFL, most of the guys in the NFL are pretty good. There's 32 teams. We might have 30 bad apples, but it's national news whenever it happens. Very much like the police officers. When they have a bad apple, everybody hears about it and it affects everyone. So one of the things that we did is we started working with a company called Will Interactive. And they made films for police officers, for military, for leadership training. And in these movies or in these videos, they would set up a scenario, and then the movie would stop. And there'd be 4 choices, like, what should John do here? You know, he could A, do this, B, do this, C, do that. And then whatever you pick, the movie would continue on based on that decision. And you'd get a chance to see that that was the wrong thing to do. And so now you can go back and choose another answer, and you can find out that that was the wrong thing to do. And you thought that was the right thing to do. But there was one that is the perfect answer. And that's the one that you should do. And I learned a lot from looking at these kinds of movies and talking about things. I learned a lot about my leadership style. My leadership style, unlike what Mr. Rice was just saying, I wouldn't go in there and fight for every single guy, because my mom would have had my ass. You know, she's like, I can't do that. But actually, in looking at this video, I realized that I should have. There were parties that I didn't want to go to because I knew there was going to be trouble there. But what I learned from looking at these videos is I should have gone, but I should have gone under a condition. I should have said, okay, guys, you know there's going to be trouble there. You know there's going to be trouble there. So I'll go with you on one condition. As soon as I say, guys, we are out of here because there's going to be trouble, you have to leave, or I'm not going to go. And they'll say, okay, all right, we'll do that. And so then we go. And if I would say, okay, guys, we're out of here. Well, in those movies, that's what guys get to see. And I never even thought of that as a potential thing to do to resolve this problem. So I think that, you know, by getting together with people, and a lot of these movies, you get a chance to stop it, and you can ask the whole room, a whole auditorium full of people, what should John do? And everybody gets a chance to make a comment and hear what he has to say. Then you play it and you get to see it. And you see it was the wrong one. I think that, you know, like learning examples of different situations that police officers are in, that kids are in as well. You know, they're all in these situations, and then they get to see, wow, I guess I shouldn't have run. You know, that was a bad thing for me to do as a kid. And the police officer, maybe I shouldn't have said that because of this. And, you know, I think that if we can get in more situations where we can talk about things that we do, you know, you see a kid dress, a police officer. I was with a police officer once, and he said, look at that kid, he's a puke. And I said, what makes you say that? I said, look at the way he's dressed. I said, are you kidding me? I said, in his neighborhood, that's the way the kids dress. If he doesn't dress like that, he's an oddball. He's just trying to fit in and be cool. And so, like, maybe that guy didn't know that, you know? And so, like, getting together and looking at video or something like that and having a chance to talk about it, parents, kids, police officers, you know, and they get a chance to see that, wow, maybe my frame of thinking is wrong. I need to really think about it a little bit differently. And these videos really help do that. I'm happy to put you in contact with that company, John, if you haven't never heard of them, Will Interactive. They're great.
Yeah, I'll touch base with you later offline, and we'll get that, and maybe we can get those guys on a future town hall and talk about that. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
That'd be great. All right, thank you, folks. Unfortunately, I have to go to have an appointment. I have to get in the car.
No problem.
And head there now. See you next time.
I think we have Mark Geist is still with us. Mark, if you're there. Hey, so if you could introduce yourself to the group, and then I want to get back to the training and what kind of training and support you'd like to see be mandatory for police officers, and that could include mental health. So if you don't mind.
Hey everyone, my name is Mark Geist. My background, I did 12 years in the Marine Corps, 6 years in law enforcement. 3 of that was as a chief of police, and then I did 9.5 years working overseas as a private security contractor Ended my career when I got injured in Benghazi when Ambassador Stevens and the 3 others got killed. But so the question, for me in training, and this is the challenge from law enforcement, I think, is, especially when you get into a city in a swing shift or midnight shift, the officers are up call after call after call. You get done with one call, you're going to a next call. You may be called on a domestic violence, then you're called on a shooting, then you're called on a robbery or an assault. And you'll have, in a 10-hour shift, you're going to have 15 or 20 calls potentially. And I agree with the general statement on debriefs. I think those are, we use those in the military. We use those when I was a contractor, as talking about what we did right, what we did wrong. And you got to have that respect and trust with the ones that you're serving with, that no one's going to go outside of that circle of trust when you have that and degrade somebody or use that as an advantage. But, we're in this age of where we want to, the mantra right now is a call to defund police, when in reality, we should probably double the number of police officers that are on our streets, because, you're doing every call that you go on. If I spend an hour on a call, that's going to require me to do at least 2 hours of paperwork. And so I'm trying to get all of that work done as well. And you don't have time to debrief. You don't have time for when you get into that, let's say, that mental health. Police officers are deployed 24/7. So they need to get into that. And then the first thing that ever gets cut is, budget-wise, is training. Or more training, not better training. But it needs to be more training. And, like Jocko said on his podcast, is, in our communities, we're training 20% of the time. When I was a contractor, I had to, I'd work a 10-hour shift at night, sometimes 12 or 24 hours. We just worked until the job got done. But then you'd catch a few hours sleep, and then you would train. That's all a part of it, because that training is going to save your life, save the lives of the people to your left and right. But it's also going to save the lives of the people you're dealing with, because not everybody out there that you may perceive to be a bad guy is a bad guy. And you have to be able to have the discernment to know the difference. And that only comes with training and experience and situational awareness. We always used to do a thing, it was called box drills or hooded drills. And you've got, basically, it's simunition, so it's a paint round, and operated out of a regular firearm. And you have a hood over your head, and when the hood comes up, you got to deal with that situation. Now, when I was a contractor, my job was to never get into a fight. It was always to get out of fights. Never wanted to stay there and do that. You had to deal with people in a lot of different areas, very similar to how you do as a cop. And you really just have to have that training. And I think that's one of the biggest things that our law enforcement doesn't get enough of. And then the other side of it is leadership. Because without leadership, you're going to have those systemic problems that come up, whether it be, systemic hatred, racism, systemic overwork, whatever it may be. It's those things, it starts with leadership, and it starts from the top down, and people have to quit being political and talking to each other instead of at each other.
Absolutely. So appreciate that very much, Mark. This is just another outstanding session, and I appreciate everybody's input. There's been just some really super valuable conversation going on here. So I want to try to call on some people that I haven't had a chance to get to. Kristen, if you could please unmute. As a mother and as a businesswoman, and after you've heard all that you've heard on this call today, what gives you hope? If you can hear me, Kristen, hopefully you're there. Lee Rosen, if you're there, if you could answer the same question as a father. Okay,
Oh,
sorry, hang on,
sorry,
Lee.
John.
We're
I
going to go
did
to
finally
Kristen
make it.
first.
Sorry. I'm obviously challenged by taking it off mute.
Yeah, first of all, introduce yourself to the group,
what
and
gives me
then as a mother, I wanted you to talk about, all the stuff that you've heard today, and what gives you hope.
Well, as a mother, it's challenging because sorry, my cleaning people are here. Vacuum in the back. What gives me hope is being able to see change. Being able to see change from when I was a child to where we are now. I think allowing my children, I have 4, a 16-year-old daughter. That was Trinity who was speaking earlier. I have a son, Dylan. He's 14. I have a 9-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old daughter. And what gives me hope was a bike ride the other day. I think everyone thinking about George Floyd and understanding what it's maybe like being Black in America, I feel seen. When I go places, I see people going out of their way to say something kind like, I like your natural hair, or just taking the opportunity to see me as a person, see my children as people. And I have noticed that change since all of this has come to light. So that I find a lot of hope with. And I didn't introduce myself. I'm Kristen, like John said, business owner, Trinity's mom, and I'm very happy to be on the call and to be invited.
Thank you. Lee, as a father and as an athlete, given that all that you've heard today.
Well, I appreciate the question because all of us play that. If you're talking about the police, you just can't talk about the police. They're also husbands and sons, friends. People have always defined me as an athlete, but I'm someone's son. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I'm a friend. We all play many roles, and so I think that our hope is in the promise that God gives us. And I'm not talking about God in terms of religion. I'm talking about God in terms of the relationship that He promises us. And if we go after it, if we seek the relationships in our life, just in terms of accountability, in order for there to exist a strong accountability relationship between people, there needs to first exist a relationship that breeds trust. Relationship is the key. How are we moving forward every day in all good, bad, right, wrong, happy, sad, crazy, whatever? Do we continue to have that mentality of moving forward, moving the change like we talked about? Too many of us have the mentality of I'm Black, I'm white, I'm police, I'm a football player, I'm rich, I'm poor, I'm smart, I'm skinny. I'm all these identities fall short. But for any one of us to learn who we are, truly, and become that every day, which is a lifelong journey, I think it will change so much in our lives, and that's the hope that we have, that I can decide who I am, who. I don't have to think anything of myself, only truly of myself. and every day become who I am. That's a great hope for the human race. That's the one thing that all of us have in common, is that we can choose, we can decide who we are. Even if other forces are trying to tell us who we are. Even if things happen in our lives that traumatize. And I just continue to have this hope. I've been speaking in schools in America for the last 30 years. And that's the message of hope that I give young people. I ask them one question. I go, listen, I got something for you. It's not just 3 words. Who are you? I'm not here to tell you who you are. That's none of my business. But I'm here hoping that you recognize your need to decide who you are for real. Stop trying to be somebody who you're not. Stop allowing other outside forces to decide that for you. Take ownership of it. That's one thing I'm impressed with some young people in this generation right now. I'm seeing them take ownership of their identity. They're not letting their parents or their community and other people tell them who they are. They're making their own decisions. And all of us, that's the one place that all of us can get that hope. That's the one place that all of us can get that hope. Deciding who we are.
Thanks, Lee. Well,
and becoming it every day.
Well said. Pastor James, if you can unmute. If you're still with us.
I think I'm on the phone.
Yeah,
I'm
we
not
can hear
on
you
the,
great.
the video.
Thank
I had
you.
to step into the car. I don't know if you can hear me or not.
So, based on what you've heard today,
Okay. Very good.
What gives you hope?
What gives me hope is that hearing from both sides, it seems like there is consensus that we can move forward in training and making some things happen, that we're not at each other's throats as much as the media and those with political expedience would have us to be. Yes, there's unrest and that type of thing is magnified, and it's in hot spots, but for the most part, I don't believe that the community and the police are at each other's throats to the degree where we can't come together and reason with one another, as the scripture says. And in reasoning, that means the police beginning to understand how the community feels, and then the community being able to express that, and then the police and our cities, our officials, our mayors and such begin to implement something that moves us forward as a nation.
I really appreciate you guys being on, and hopefully Pastor Darrell Scott will be able to join us in a couple weeks for our next town hall. So,
sure.
So Jeremy, if you're available, I'd like to come back to you before we close up here.
Yes.
As a young man about to embark on a legal career and through the West Point and your upbringing in West Point, as we look at training and accountability and teamwork, dedication, and improving our communities, what gives you hope?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, I mean, we live in the greatest country on earth. And what gives me hope is our creed, our American spirit. I mean, our values are what make us, that's what propels us forward. That's why every generation we do better living up to our creed and ensuring equality for all people. So I always have hope in knowing that who we are as Americans, that our values, that all of us are created equal under God. That gives me hope, that knowing that as generations go on, yes, we have challenges. Yes, we are an imperfect nation, but we are still the world's best shot at equality and freedom for all people. And so that gives me hope every day. And I look around and I see my peers coming together, trying to make this moment something that ends up being productive. And I'm proud of the work you're doing, John, and everyone on this call. This is the type of work that it takes to make a better and more and a better future for our nation. So that always keeps me encouraged.
We're proud to have you, I got to say.
I'm just proud to be on with all of
really
you.
Looking forward to your input as we move forward on some of the initiatives and programs that we're going to be rolling out. Thank you. Boyd?
Absolutely. No problem.
Did Julius join?
Unmute.
Okay.
I don't think he has joined.
So, Mark, before you sign off, for all your experience and all your different endeavors, from police to military service to contractor service, I know we have an event with you next week in Colorado Springs. As we looked at our role play scenario, hopefully you were involved with us when that took place, and you see the disconnect between how the community perceives the police and how the police perceive their job. What gives you hope?
I think the biggest thing that gives me hope is that we have things like this where we're talking with each other instead of talking at each other. If we let the media, am I still there? Can you still hear me? Okay. If part of the problem is everyone has a cell phone, and most of what we're getting through the media or on information is through that. And really it isolates us because people that respond to us, or we tend to gravitate towards people who respond similar to us instead of opposite of us. Because I would rather sit and talk with somebody who has a different point of view than I do all day long, because that's how I learn. That's what gives me hope, is being able to sit and talk and recognize, as we said, we walk in each other's shoes as much as we can, and to look at things from a different point of view instead of putting blinders on and thinking this is how it is, because we all are responsible for our own actions. And I can't control how somebody reacts to me. I can only control how I act and how I react to them. And if I react in a negative manner, it's only going to perpetuate that negative image or that negative reaction from them. And, I think this is just a wonderful way of getting together, at least talking and doing that, and when it comes to law enforcement, we've done that with our local law enforcement here, is getting people within the community that have questions about law enforcement, who don't necessarily have that trust, and let's switch shoes. Let's put in, we do training where we switch shoes, where you get to be the cop and I get to be the person that is in the car, and whether it goes for, and then you deal with that situation, and I have to deal with that intimidation of being stopped by a cop. And, I think that is what we have to do, is just continue to talk, continue to train, and
that scenario
continue to hold each other
talked
accountable
about,
and hold ourselves
the
accountable.
role play. When we get to do these things in live person, you can do that kind of interaction where the community gets to be the cops, and then the cops get to be the community, and you can script out some role playing and some of the same things that Mike was talking about, like different scenarios based on where they go. And we're looking forward to being able to roll some of that out in the future.
That would be terrific. And I just want to thank everybody out there that's on the call for jumping on, and, thanks for your input, because it matters. And it matters, I know, to John, it matters to me, and it probably matters to everyone else on the call. So God bless you all, and thank you for that.
You have to unmute, Boyd.
the vignette training that Mike Ains referenced, that was the most beneficial aspect I felt for the young boys at Steve Harvey Youth Mentorship Camp when I helped mentor there. We did it where we had us 2 military per 20 boys. We were their mentors, and we presented them with what-if scenarios, and then we gave our feedback. And then they had them where they brought in law enforcement, local law enforcement of color, leading the vignettes with the boys themselves, and that was probably the best takeaway I had for what was gained there by the children and the law enforcement and us veterans. At the same time, what's real in our minds is real, and that's what helps us recognize that maybe we don't know everything, but we need to listen a little more.
That was great.
Thank you.
Diego, if you're still with us, from a business perspective, and the stronger the community is, the better climate it is for business, and the better it is for that community to prosper. And based on the conversation that we had today, and you see the back and forth on the, I don't know if disconnect is the right word for it, but there's definitely a difference of perception between the police and the community. And how can business help bridge that gap? I don't know if Diego's still with us. He shows that he's still on. All right, well, we'll skip that one. So, Paul, I'll go to you. As a police officer, and you've heard all the different discussion from the community members, of different backgrounds, different socioeconomic status, what gives you hope?
Leadership, that we have enough officers that have the guts to look inward and say, hey, maybe we haven't been doing it right this whole time. We can do better. We can get better. We have to change our mindset, though. And I think that's the hardest thing for, any, a human being to do, is to change your mindset, to question your own beliefs on stuff. We're all humans. We're all subject to conditioning. And if you do the job for a while, you get conditioned, no doubt about it, to think a certain way. Based on what you've heard and experienced and seen and stuff. So, that's, to me, that's what it's going to take. I also think, to me, so much of it comes back to training, though, even if it starts in the police academies. It has to be less of, hey, everybody out there might be the person who tries to kill you. So you have to, be suspicious of everybody. You have to, kind of, there's this blanket way to kind of treat everybody. It's always about you getting home safe. And that's true, but you can still treat everybody with respect. So it's going to be that leadership. It's going to have to be a, fundamental change. The average cop out there, I shouldn't say the average, a lot of cops, they're resistant to the community stuff because they took the job, simply put, I want to arrest bad guys, right? That's what I want to do. I want to fight crime, and then when they get on the job and it's, hey, go out there, community stuff, national night out, coffee with a cop. All this stuff that I believe in is great. They're resistant to it because it's not what, they kind of maybe thought the job was going to be. And I don't think they even think about it deep enough as, hey, am I being viewed as a wolf or am I being viewed as the sheepdog? I think that's a message we need to keep, challenging officers with. What are you being viewed as? How are your actions getting viewed by the public? When you talk to people, when you approach people, I think it's got to be little by little. May sound silly, but how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? It's a huge task, but just one person at a time, one officer at a time. You got to start chipping away and
No, that's
changing.
well said. I mean, I think that as we go down the road on this topic, I think there's, the scenario of the wolf and the sheepdog, was very revealing. And, I think some of the stuff that Mike was talking about is stuff that we need to look into too. How do you react to different scenarios? And then when we can do these things live and in person, role reversal, where the community has to play the role of the cops, and then the cops get to be the community. And you can see, and I think that as we talk about walking a mile in someone's shoes, that gives that perspective really changes how you perceive yourself. And that was kind of the goal of today, was to show, we had quite a few law enforcement that were on the call. A lot of them didn't speak, but they were here to listen and see how we're doing this. And my phone's been blowing up with texts. So it definitely was mission accomplished. I want to throw it open to anybody out there in the group right now. We're down to, we're at the 2-hour mark. If anybody has anything they'd like to say, I'll throw it open to the floor, or if any questions.
This is Paul. Just the last thing I would like to say, and I know the military guys, especially the special forces guys, are going to understand this. Law enforcement doesn't ever want to train under stress. And I know that's something I learned from getting trained by some ex-special forces guys. I spent some time on my county SWAT team. There's a lot of resistance to do that for a lot of different reasons. And, we need to get over that. You asked the question of, somebody, hey, as a mom, what are your thoughts? What are your, worries, fears? What gives you hope? And as a dad now, is my local police force prepared? Have they trained enough to go into my kid's school if there's an active shooter in there and save my kids? And and I go, well, if they have the same amount of training that I get at my PD or my guys get at my PD, yeah, I'm not feeling too good about that. Because lack of funds, budget reasons, time, and then a lot of officers just don't want to do it either. And that's where it comes back to, how great do you want to be at your job? Do you want to just be mediocre? Or do you want to be great at your job in all different aspects? And that's just, again, tough thing, for people to do is look themselves in the mirror and say, can I get better? Can I work harder and do better and get better?
No, thanks.
That's all I have to say on that.
Anyone else? Kristen, anybody else have anything they want to add to the discussion? Go ahead, Arlene.
I do. So my question is, this is for our law enforcement. What mental health is available to you? So that's my question.
Mental health services, right?
Yeah, mental health services.
In New Jersey, the Attorney General recently started what's called a resiliency program. And it's basically for a couple officers in each PD that are trained to, talk to an officer when they're stressed out about this, that, or the other. They can go to and talk to them. There's a program out there called Cop to Cop, where cops can talk to other cops about the stressors of the job. But to be honest with you, we could probably do a lot better. They call it, the residual, effect, of all the different things that you see over time. It eventually, gets to you. We could do a better job of
Melina?
it, in my opinion.
Okay. My name is Miriam Albert. I'm a Los Angeles Police Department management analyst and a chaplain. I'm also a member of Critical Incident Response Team and member of the committee that plans all the training for Critical Incident Response Team. We have Behavioral Sciences Division that's comprised of PhD clinical psychologists only. You have to have the highest degree in order to become a police psychologist with Los Angeles Police Department. They provide volunteer therapy, and now it's made it, actually COVID made it much easier, and a lot more officers and their wives in particular have been reaching out because they now do therapy sessions through health video net. And but we also have a mechanism where if the command staff feels that the officer needs to be seen, they can direct him, which means it's mandatory and it cannot be refused. And it is in cases when it's directed, they do it on the work time. In case when it's a volunteer, then it's in your personal time. In addition, we have many classes. We have we also have peer support counselors, and that's employees who get trained. We have, I can't remember exactly how many, over 100 employees who have been trained through police officer standards and training certified program. On our chief page, and they are categorized by different subjects. So
Thank you.
So LAPD
Adam,
has a very strong mental health support. Thank you.
besides Life Aid, Adam, what else have you had there?
So I was just texting. I think Melania and Paul said most of it. There's not a lot. I mean, our agency has the employee assistance, and there are some group and therapy things for peers that are available. But at least in my agency and department, like the stigma of going and looking for mental health isn't a great option. And if there's at least the perception administration finds that you're going for mental health, that you're going to be disciplined or removed from maybe your assignment. And so I agree with Paul, we can do much better. And I think that we're learning on that and we're getting better at it. But there's still work to be done for sure.
Boyd? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question. Oh, sorry. Yeah, one of the officers spoke about the bias training that is conducted, and I was just curious, how often does that bias training occur? Is that a one-time thing? Is it a regular occurrence? The second question I had was, I don't know about you guys, but when I work, if I have a challenging phone call, what have you, I take a minute and I walk away. I have to gather myself so that I don't take whatever occurred on the phone call to the next phone call, because it's not whoever I'm talking with afterwards' fault that I had a horrible phone call the first time. And so I'm curious, time for officers, you encounter a challenging situation, and after that, what type of recovery time do you have? How are you able to regroup? Bring yourself back to zero in order to effectively conduct the next call.
I'll answer. You have the amount of time until the next call comes in. That's what you get. If every shift is different. I live in a fairly affluent or work in a fairly affluent county, Morris County, New Jersey. I'm not working in Newark or Patterson where they just run from call to call to call, but we still have days where it's just you do kind of just run from call to call to call. If you've got a good squad and a good supervisor, kind of realize, hey man, he's kind of getting beat up, today, you say, maybe the sergeant steps in and goes, hey, I'll take that call for you, take a break. But very often it's just not possible. It's funny you brought this up because I just had this idea recently of, trying to encourage officers when they schedule their vacation time during the course of the year, rather than just taking a couple days here, a couple days there, like block out a large section of time. Like use like half your vacation time and literally, be away from work for like 3 weeks. Give yourself like a big period of time to decompress, step away from the job completely and see if that, that helps you. Because I've talked to guys that said, maybe they went out with an injury, right? I know a guy that I worked with recently had to have knee surgery. So, he's out for about 2 months and he's like, I came back, I felt great. And that got me thinking, well, hey, maybe we need to, rethink scheduling. Even to, again, reduce that long-term, little by little, stress buildup. I'd love to hear what Adam has to say about that. He mentioned that you went out with PTSD. I don't know exactly what how it came about, but I'm sure he's got a strong opinion on that.
I agree with what Paul said. We don't go, I mean, like Paul said, I worked in an urban department and we had, 400,000 people in our city. But that's the way it was. And unfortunately, that's the Band-Aid fix that we're able to allow for is we go there, we fix it. We don't get a whole lot of time for ourselves or to decompress about the last call. It is going to the next call and it's going to the next one. And I agree that admin and supervisors could step in and help that situation. At least recognize when people are struggling or getting beat up, like Paul said, and just taking it day after day or call after call. It's hard, and people don't understand that you might call for your car window being broken into, but the officer might have just responded from a dead baby call or a horrific accident, and that's their next call. And it doesn't excuse that part of it, but it's just part of the human side of it is police officers are going to come back with stress from or carry on the stress from a previous call onto the next. And I think that we could probably learn to do better or give those officers that time to debrief like Kristen said earlier, and just to be able to let it sit for a while. But like Paul said, not every agency has that ability to do that.
Thank you. Did you have another question, Kristen?
Well, my other question was about the bias training. I was curious how often that was conducted.
I know in our agency we did it like once a year, and it started probably 4 or 5 years ago, and we would start to have that kind of implicit bias training, community-based training more so, and the critical or the emotional disturbed pre-bill. So we started dealing a lot more with the medical side of it and getting a lot more of that training as well.
Thank you. You want to chime in on that, Paul, on bias training?
Yeah, my PD, it's basically, a PowerPoint or, reread the policy, once a year, and then, have to do like a quiz. We have this software called Power DMS, which I think, probably a lot of police departments have. And it's how the department disseminates, SOPs and new directives, general orders, special memos, et cetera, et cetera. And, once a year it's there and you read it and then you do the little quiz, and most of the questions are about the same every year. But, it's not the type of thing that you can, practice, so to speak, do like practical situations. At least I don't know of a way to do that. Maybe somebody else can come up with something. Something like that.
I don't know if there's a perfect way to do that either, Paul. I think that I would agree that you might have the same interpretation, but I think younger officers struggle with the communication part of it. Like I learned a lot, like how to talk to people and to just communicate with them through over the course of my 16 years or whatever. I mean, a big part of what I found frustration was from the community was not having an explanation or not explaining what we were doing or what I was doing. And I found most helpful for me, and I trained some of my younger recruits, was to just tell the people, like, hey, this is why I'm putting you in handcuffs. You got to sit here for a second. It's not a big deal. You're going to be released pretty soon. This is what's happening. And I found that a lot of people responded to just getting that kind of explanation of what we're doing and why we're doing it. And if people understood that and that was communicated both ways, I think that was so helpful, at least in my experience.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The better you can communicate why you're doing it, and the more confident you sound that you know what you're doing, you understand the rules, the laws, the better off you are. The more people will, comply and understand.
Thank you, guys. Boyd?
This is the last bit, closing back out again about these vignettes. And, what we're going to experience is really neat. We're going to see the light bulbs go off in these children's eyes, the way I got to see it at the mentorship camp. And the sad part that went with it is knowing that what we did for them that day with having vignettes and learning what the other people think and having that dialogue, I knew that they weren't going to get that once they left there. And for the majority, weren't going to get that because it's not formalized as a system. And the whole impact we want to create is through our retreats is that we make this a habit now where people want to engage in conversation to understand what their law enforcement that provide for them, what is real to them, just always, because that's part of the relationship. So this is a skill set we have to practice because it's going to decay because they've been living a whole nother way up until the point they're going to have their first retreat. And then with that, and I think it's high encouragement, we're going to get to the law enforcement that's there. This does not stop. Now that you met the people you serve, go into their communities, eat with them, your friends today, keep it going. Don't allow this relationship to decay and keep the conversation. So that's how the shift, I believe, happens. And I saw that happening at the mentorship camp. I don't know how many of them held on to whatever shift they had when they had the aha moment and seeing someone else's perspective. But that's
well said.
I think that's paramount to our
that,
success.
The role playing and the vignettes or whatever, changing roles, walk a mile in each other's shoes, that theme that we had today, we're going to carry that through as we move forward. And I think, we'll get creative and get some other folks, more creative folks than me, get involved in this thing and really try to get it to the next level. Because I think the conversation you could see when the cops, when Paul and Adam and John and everybody else were describing their role as the sheepdog, and then the community members were like, no, it's something else. That disconnect is what we're trying to help. I don't know if we want to use the word solve, but at least change, make it change for the better. And I think if we did that as a country, we're going to be a better country and a better community of citizens. Does anybody have anything else before we sign off? This is the longest one so far, so I guess we did a pretty good job.
No, I just want to thank everyone and look forward to seeing whoever's coming to Colorado. It's going to be our first actual community challenge, we're calling it, which is going to be great. And hopefully we'll learn a lot and then be able to use that.
Thank you, everyone, for your contributions, and thanks to all the panelists that participated. I've been getting lots of texts that everybody really liked what we did today. So thank you, and thanks to Boyd and Renata, and I don't think Lee's still on, but all the guys who helped, Overton, everybody who helped put this together. Thank you very much. Really appreciate everyone's input and valuable contribution to making this a great program.
Thanks, everyone.